Okay, now we'll be discussing the spontaneous potential, or SP. So, what is a spontaneous potential, or SP? That is, it is most commonly referred. Well, basically, the SP is just a voltage. Uh, to explain it, I like this analogy, which states that the basic principle of the SP measurement, a multimeter with extremely long leads. So put it on this way. One lead is going to be your wireline tool, this one over here. The one SP electrode is attached to this wireline tool. It goes with the wireline cable way back to the wireline unit. The other cable, or the other electrode, goes out of the wireline unit, and you finish putting it. You can just drill a hole with your hand. It doesn't have to be like a really deep hole. You just drill a hole in the ground, in the drilling area, or next to your wireline truck, and you just put there your electrode. Then you fill it with mud. So what you will be measuring is the voltage between this electrode, which is also referred as fish, your SP fish, and the other electrode. Maybe this image might confuse you because you think that these two electrodes are physically attached by this line, but it is not. The purpose of this line is to show you where is the difference in voltage. It's between one electrode on surface and your wireline tool, which is downhole. Now, this presentation will not have like cool images because this is how an SP will look. It is not a tool by itself, so it could be anything. But this could be the electrode of the SP. In this case, you will find it anywhere. It depends on exactly the type of induction tool or the type of lateral lob, but it could be anywhere on the zone. You will have to check the wireline logging tool specifications for that. Now, why do we have that voltage? What are the origins of that voltage? Well, there are basically two main contributors. One, and the most prominent, are the electrochemical processes. The second, electrocinetic processes. So these electrochemical processes are originated by fluid of different salinities, and they come in two ways. One is membrane potential, which is related to this first image. In this case, you have water saturated shale and a permeable sandstone. On this membrane, different insalinities create that small current due to exchange in ions. And the other contributor with an electrochemical processor is known as liquid junction. Remember that when you drill the hole, the drilling fluid is going to enter into the formation, and on the area where you have the contact of the drilling fluid, whatever was there in the formation, there is going to be also change in ions, and that creates that voltage. The second contributor is the flow of fluid through the mud cake. So, but that's just like theory, and why is that created? Now, regarding the applications of SP, why running, it can help you to estimate the volume of shale. You can also make an estimation of formation water resistivity, or W, and can be used for well-to-well correlation. Although it's not the preferred curve for correlation, you should have a gamma ray, or it would be better if you had a gamma ray to correlate. Now, Factors affecting the measurement of SP. As we just mentioned, it is like extremely low voltage. So any currents over there could interfere or create erratic measurements. So be careful on these ones. I started saying that magnetism of measuring wells or the drum. Okay, we're here on this picture. You have a wireline drum with a wireline cable installed. So if this drum is magnetized, it's going to ruin your SP. In order to lower your tools into, or the wireline tools into the hole, this device that you have here is used to measure, to give you depth measurements and tension measurements. So the wireline cable goes through this device, and if these wheels are magnetized, it's also going to create erratic measurements. So be careful of this. For those of you that it's the first time you see something like this, well, this is a wireline. This is why the core business area is called wireline. You can see here, this is a cable outside. It's metallic. Inside of it, there are sometimes 7 conductors. So there are 7 small cables inside of this armor. You could also find it with 1, but the point here is that if one of the cables that are inside of this wireline touches the outside, the armor, metallic part, is going to create a leakage and is going to ruin your SP. Another conditions affecting your SP measurements, straight currents, such as that experienced during lighting storm, welding operations on the rig, or when cathodic protection or power generators are active. This is a good point to mention on the safety meeting previous to the logging activities. You can definitely not stop lighting storms, but you could stop welding operations at least while you're running your SP. You can also deactivate cathodic protection for this run. And there's another comment here saying that telluric currents like the Aurora Borealis could affect your SP. Well, I never had a chance to presence the Aurora Borealis. But once, I know I have a funny story. Remember that I told you that you just put the surface electrode, you just make a hole with your hands, you put it on the ground and add some mud on it. It happens once that we're logging and started to watch like SP erratic measurements, but the induction tool was behaving properly. Well, we went out of the truck of the wireline unit to see what was happening, and there was a dog in location. So the dog took that electrode and moved it. I don't know why there was a dog, or it was like a really dangerous place for a dog, but yeah, maybe we could add this. A dog taking away your SP electrode might also affect your measurements. So back to the login environment. So we have our formation, we just drill it, and we ended up with this hole filled with mud. I want you at this point to pay attention to this value. This is the resistivity of the mud filtrate. So the mud that is here is going to enter the flushed zone, and we can measure the resistivity of the mud filtrate at location. At least in my time, we were able to use this device. You just get some mud and you put it in here, you turn it on, and it will tell you the resistivity values. I'm sure that there might be other devices, but this is the one that I am familiar with. Fine. Now let's cover the ASP baseline response in shale. What I want you to see on the left track, this is a track, all this is a track. On the left track, you have two curves. The red one is the SP, so let's focus on this one. When you're logging, well, in this case, we were logging in shale. Well, let's start from the bottom up because you log from bottom to top. You're logging in shale, as you can see here. Then there is a water saturated sandstone, and you see a deflection of the SP. You go back to shale, and as you can appreciate, there is an SP shale baseline. At this moment, what I want you to focus, or the idea that I want to bear in mind, is that there's going to be this baseline response for the SP in shale, and in anything else, let's say in a permeable formation, whatever there is in that, there will be a deflection. It could be a positive or a negative deflection. And if we compare that with the resistivity curves, you see a similar behavior. Shale, they're all reading the same, but in this water saturated zone, they also make a deflection. Why they're moving this direction, on the other, we will cover that later, but at this point, keep in mind the concept of baseline for shale. In your SP and in your resistivity curve, it will be called resistivity shale baseline. Now, regarding why the SP curve moved to the right or to the left, this is the reason. It depends on the relationship between the resistivity of the mud filtrate and the resistivity of water in your formation. So in this scenario where water formation is bigger than the resistivity of the mud filtrate, it will move to the right. The most common case is this one. It will move on, it will have a negative deflection. It will move to the left. Now, let's see this graph here. It's related to the resistivity shale baseline method. At this point, okay, let's read it. Comparison of your deep resistivity to resistivity shale baseline provides a qualitative, this word is important, it's qualitative, a qualitative estimate of water saturation. High water saturation is indicated, is indicated where your deep resistivity is less than the resistivity shale baseline, while low water saturation is indicated where the resistivity or your deep resistivity is greater than the shale baseline. So to put it easy, you're logging your resistivity tool. You're not interested in knowing if there's low water saturation. I mean, what you really want to see is hydrocarbons, right? So this is kind of tricky. Low water saturation will imply high hydrocarbon saturation. So in high hydrocarbon saturation, your deep curve will be to the right of your shale baseline. We're not interested in knowing if the deep is reading more than the shallow, or if the shallow reads more than the deep. What we're trying to see here, or what we're doing here, to have a qualitative estimate of water saturation, and which will lead to an estimate of hydrocarbon saturation, is we're going to see our resistivity curves. We're going to find our resistivity shale baseline, and once we find our resistivity shale baseline, we're going to check the response of the deep resistivity curve. In this case, as you can see it on the header or on the top of this track, the resistivity is going to be the dash with the longest dashed line is this one. So what we care about is that if the resistivity is going to read to the right, meaning higher values, higher resistivity, it's going to indicate that there might well be high content of hydrocarbons. If your deep is reading to the left, there might be a lot of water over there. There might not be hydrocarbons. So this is like the good thing, and this is like the bad thing. That in short. Now, classifying invasion is kind of tricky, but to put it in short, when we talk about resistive invasion, that means generally that, well, not generally will be the second assumption. When we talk about resistive invasion, the resistivity of the mud filtrate will be higher than the resistivity of formation water. Generally, now I can say it like this: a resistive invasion will give you a resistive profile in water saturated formation. Those things are important. That generally, in most cases, that will happen, but for that to happen, it must be a water saturated formation. So, just to get familiar with the terms, a conductive invasion will create a conductive profile. A conductive profile means that in your resistivity tool, the resistivity of the shallow will be almost the same as the resistivity of your dip curve, or the resistivity of your shallow will be smaller than the resistivity of your deep curve. And let's watch the graph. So, example of a resistivity invasion profile in water saturated formation, negative SP deflection indicates that the resistivity of the mud filtrate is bigger than the water formation resistivity. We saw that on this graph. For negative deflection, this is the scenario, right? So, the invasion of mud filtrate results in your shallow resistivity being greater than your deep resistivity. What do we mean by shallow deep? Let's go to the page over here. What do we mean by shallow, medium, and deep resistivity? Remember that your resistivity tools will provide you curves with different depth of investigations. So in chapter number, let me see if I recall this, in chapter number 3, we will see a technical data sheet for an induction tool. That induction tool in particular gave you distances from the center of the tool into the formation up to 10 inches, 20 inches, 30 inches, up to 90 inches. So when we say deep is your readings further into the formation. When we say shallow, we're talking about the closest measurement, and we say medium, well, some value in the median. So this is an example of a resistive invasion with a resistive profile and a conductive invasion with a conductive profile. Now, I'm going to read the following 3 slides because the information I do consider is really important in order to better understand what invasion profiles are and how do they work. So, invasion profiles observed on resistivity logs are the result of 2 processes occurring during invasion. These processes include the mixing of water-based mud filtrate and original water in pores of the flushed zone. This mixing occurs in both water-saturated and hydrocarbon-saturated formations. So mixing is a key word here. The other factor is the displacement of movable hydrocarbons by mud filtrate in pores of the flushed zone. So to understand invasion profiles, keep in mind that mixing is important and displacement is also important. Invasion profiles in water-saturated formations are easy to interpret because they develop in response to mixing alone. So there's one cause. This mixing can cause either a resistive or a conductive profile to be apparent. In hydrocarbon-bearing formations, the interpretation might not be so simple. Mixing and displacement both occur in formations where hydrocarbon is present. So the possibility arises where the 2 processes have competing effect on shallow. Here we have another comment. Hydrocarbon-bearing formations that experience conductive invasion intuitively should show conductive profiles. Those that experience resistive invasion might also show conductive profile if significant volume of hydrocarbons were moved. But at the end of the day, the case of hydrocarbons formation that experience conductive invasion showing conductive profile is like the most frequent thing. Now, to finish the whole reading part of this presentation, let's focus on this graph. So this is called a common sense conductive profile in a hydrocarbon-bearing formation invaded by water-based mud filtrate. So your shallow resistivity decreased in response to the displacement of movable hydrocarbons. And this one, here you have your resistivity curve. The shallow is this one. The problem with this common sense approach to invasion profiles is that it completely ignores the effect of mixing. It is true that the flushed zone contains a smaller volume of hydrocarbons after invasion than it did before. This, after all, is what causes your shallow resistivity to decrease. So up to this point, we're okay with common sense. However, the flushed zone pore space previously occupied by movable hydrocarbon is, after invasion, occupied by mixed water. This mixed water can have a resistivity greater than that of the original formation water, which by itself would cause an increase in your shallow resistivity. And I will stop reading. To finish, I want you to look at this graph. So in this case, what is happening? It is called a progressive sequence of conductive invasion. So A has a curve response prior invasion, and so on and so on. So D is what happens at the end, and you can see how the curve starts to behave. So A, curve response prior invasion, curve B is the curve response at onset of conductive invasion. C and D is a curve response as invasion progresses deeper, resulting in a conductive invasion profile. So give a look at this graph, and thanks for watching.